This is my 2012 Audi S4, and it currently has more water in it than the Atlantic Ocean. You can see all of it leaking out. This is going to be some extensive water damage. Before we get into it, I just wanted to thank today's video sponsor, the DZX TOZ two-way articulating borescope. Now this thing is absolutely awesome for doing inspections and doing vehicle repairs as well. For example, I used it on my Camaro to inspect my overall engine health. Now it features a two-way 180-degree articulating lens that allows you to see 360 degrees all the way around. This was especially helpful for inspecting my Camaro's engine because I got to see the cylinder walls, the piston rings, and also the valves to generally check on how they look and how they're doing with all this boost. If there were a problem or concern with the engine, I definitely would be able to see it with this high quality borescope because the image is very high quality. You can actually select from the menu to see full 1080p. I also do really like the magnifying feature along with the clear resolution because this is something that you don't really get with other borescopes out there. You usually have to manually insert it further down the cylinder in order to see more, but you can literally just zoom with this thing. I'd also like you to note that you're not limited to car repairs with this. It's pretty rigid and can be used in many industrial sectors and uses, but it can also reach very difficult to reach areas. So it's definitely a very useful inspection tool. Make sure to pick up one with the link in the description below and use code Toby to save on it. So I'm going to tell you all exactly how this happened and how I diagnosed it in case you all ever have this problem. So it's pretty simple. I noticed that simultaneously I got like 8 codes, all for O2 sensors, that absolutely none of them were working. I will pop them up on the screen, and that's when I knew something was wrong electrically because there was just no way that you get all of these codes at the same time. Yes, you can have a sensor fail, maybe 2, so you would get 2 codes, but I literally had all 8 codes, which indicated that the relay and fuses were no longer getting power, or possibly the wires, because they all work off of the same relays and fuses to supply power to the O2 sensors. So that's how I knew something was wrong. On top of that, you all saw the initial clip of all the water coming out from underneath the car. Well, that's because it flooded where the plenum is and where the ECU is. So very stupid location, a huge design flaw. Audi decided to put the ECU box where the cowl is. And there are 2 drains that are supposed to get all the water out of the cowl area. If these drains get clogged, then it collects a bunch of water and then it gets into your ECU fuse box. And when it gets into the ECU fuse box, that's exactly what happens. What happened to me. So pretty much I did not make sure that there weren't leaves clogging the drains on the Audi because I left it parked outside for 2 weeks underneath a tree. It collected a whole bunch of leaves, it clogged the drains, and then caused a flood. The first step here obviously is to try and assess the damage. So I didn't know how extensive it was. Obviously I took like the whole fuse box apart, got everything disconnected, all of the pins, the terminal connectors, everything. And I was taking a look at it and it was pretty extensive on the corrosion. I did try to go ahead and just use white vinegar, baking soda, and salt. So this is like a quick little tip. If your corrosion is mild, you can actually use that combination of ingredients, dip it in the white vinegar, add some salt, and the acidic properties of the white vinegar will actually clean the corrosion off the copper wire. So that's only if it's mild. If it's too advanced and it actually broke the wire, you have no other choice than to either repin the terminal and cut back a lot of the corrosion, or just completely crimp in a new connector because it's very hard to come by those terminals from Volkswagen. They're a specialty type terminal. I bought like a 400-piece terminal connector kit that I used to work on all my other cars, you know, when I pin and depin connectors, and it did not work on the Audi. So it had a specialty pin connector. I called Audi. It was stupid expensive to get more of those terminals. So I said, we're gonna do away with this because a lot of the wire underneath the insulation was so badly soaked up and saturated with water that it corroded the wire about 7 inches down the wiring harness loom. So even if I did repin it with that existing wire, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't conduct right. So my only real option was to just cut back the whole harness after the white vinegar and all of that type of stuff. I mean, I did also use contact cleaner on some of the wires just to see if I could clean them up, But again, the corrosion was too far gone. The wires were breaking. They were actually breaking all the way down. Like, there are some weird connectors or some sort of weird unions down the loom. It completely broke. Like, it corroded so bad that the wires just fell apart. So cleaning it wasn't an option with the vinegar and the contact cleaner. We just needed a whole new harness setup so that I could splice in connectors or just replace the harness altogether. So what exactly did I do? I consulted my friend that is an Audi Master Tech or Volkswagen Master Tech, and he said, you can't solder because it's gonna mess up the resistance, but what you can do is use heat shrink butt connectors and splice in new connectors from a new harness onto your pre-existing harness. But make sure you cut back a lot of the wire because the insulation is soaked and the wires underneath are corroded. So you need to cut it back until you see fresh copper. Now you guys might be wondering, why do this instead of just replacing the whole harness? Replacing the whole harness is a motor out job. And the only harnesses that I were able to find were used for 200 bucks. I did my thorough research. I searched it up on eBay. I looked everywhere for harnesses, used ones, maybe from junkyards, etc. I found one from a junkyard. It was 200 bucks. But the last thing I wanted to do was pull the motor, get the whole harness, the new one hooked up, and then have there be 10 million issues because it's a junkyard harness. And they say it's certified, but I never trust that because they don't really check it. Let's be honest here. They pull it from a car and they sell the harness. So I was skeptical about that. I asked for his advice, from that perspective. And he said, you should be fine if you cut the wires back and splice in new ones with heat shrink butt connectors. Don't solder so you don't mess up the resistance, and you should be good to go. So that was my plan. I went with it and I got this harness for 200 bucks. Remember how I said the entire loom had extensive corrosion? Yeah, I mean, this was a nightmare. And I ended up cutting back so much that I had to compensate for the lost wire with actually taking that wire from the old harness and splicing it in with the connector at the same time. So at least we got rid of all the corrosion. I made sure to unwrap the entire loom to go back as far as necessary to find it. And once I saw clean copper, that's when I stopped. So all of it that was corroded out, destroyed, is now gone. I even took it one step further to ensure that it's actually a weatherproof seal. Heat shrink butt connectors are awesome, but sometimes when you heat them up, they can lose the weatherproofness because you go through the plastic part of them or whatever it is. So I made sure to add another heat shrink on top of it so it was all secured up. And all in all, I want you guys to take a guess right now in the comment section below how many hours it took me to do this. And I'll reveal it right now. It was around 13 hours of work just sitting there to redo every corroded bit and to get new terminal connectors on there and connectors in general. So it wasn't fun at all. And just a quick little FYI, I'm pretty confident that there's never going to be an issue stemming from this again because I picked up a quality crimping tool and I tested all of my crimp connections before I just, willy-nilly threw the car back together. So I made sure that when I pulled on it with all my strength, the wires didn't separate, and they didn't. So that's a good, solid connection. I mean, as strong as solder, I would have to say, with that crimping tool. And I'm not really worried about it. I'm also not worried about further deterioration of the wires because they were submerged. The insulation soaks it up, but I cut back so much of the wire that it's not a concern. That old wire that was severely corroded simply does not exist in the wire loom anymore. So that's why I took my time with it to make sure I ripped all of that out and I wouldn't have a future problem down the road. No, this isn't a temporary fix. Would I rather have bought a new $2,000 harness and thrown it in the car and spent the time to pull the motor and all that money? I mean, yeah, that's the best solution, but what I did still works and I'm confident that it'll be good for future proofing. As far as harness repair goes, there's not that much left in this process, so I got some Tessa tape, which is really good for wrapping up the harness. I wrapped it up, made sure everything was sound, and then I put it all back together inside of the box and plugged in the ECU for the first start with the redone wiring harness. Everything is redone. I hope I don't have any codes anymore, but we're gonna see. guess this is progress, but close and no cigar because we still have 2 codes. At least like 6 of them disappeared. So now only the downstream O2 sensors are getting a code and the auxiliary intercooler pump, which is for the supercharger. So thank God we got rid of some of them with rewiring. Honestly, from there, I started to do a whole bunch of wiring diagnostic all the way from the ECU pins after I unplugged it to the actual relays and boxes to make sure that all my wire connections were good and to make sure that a loose connection or possibly corroded wire wasn't causing those codes that were still present. So let me remind you all, I did go ahead and order some new O2 sensors in the meantime because I no longer had the downstream and upstream codes at the same time. I only had a downstream code set, so the both of them. So at the same time that I was diagnosing and making sure that all the wiring was good all the way to the ECU, and we did this by testing out the relays, checking for continuity with the pins. I mean, there were a million different tests. I even went ahead and replaced one of the ground wires that go from the pin to the actual relay box because the same relay controls all of the O2 sensors. So I just wanted to make sure that was eliminated, check for continuity, made sure that there was proper resistance. Everything was good with that. So I just needed to wait for these new O2 sensors to come, and hypothetically speaking, it should be good to go. With new O2 sensors, those codes should disappear. So we're checking continuity from that wire all the way in the pin to the one I just spliced in, and we have continuity. That's perfect. We know that my ECU is good because now we're getting power whenever the accessory mode is on to the fuses for the O2 sensors. So again, I just wanted to double check everything, make sure that the wires are good from the ECU connector, because what can happen is that your ECU can go bad from the water damage, it shorts out, and then you no longer have it sending a ground signal to turn on your O2 sensors. So it's just me going the extra mile to ensure that everything was actually good with the ECU as well, even though I redid all of the wiring. Now, while I waited for those new O2 sensors to come, I really wanted to take care of the crusty, dusty, rusted, and it shouldn't have rusted because it's aluminum. The reason why it did is because I thought it was a good idea to try and weld aluminum to mild steel with a flux core welder. I didn't know what I was doing at the time. I just wanted to weld it because I was tired of not being able to drill through it. I had to discover what a step-up bit was in order to get through that aluminum because it was very hard to drill. So it kept breaking my drill bits. I was like, let me weld it with the flux core that I rented out at the time. Terrible idea, fellas. Anyways, it bothered me so much because the flux core actual wire that got like fused onto the aluminum started to rust like crazy, and I didn't like that. So I was like, let's refinish this. I'll drill the holes. We'll give it a fresh new paint job, you know, grind it down, get rid of the rust first to make sure that it doesn't like corrode, because now you've actually caused the aluminum to slightly corrode. So I grinded it down, prepped it up, painted it, got it black so it's nice, subtle, and hidden. Got some new holes drilled in it, which was a pain in the butt. Once again, if you want to drill aluminum like this, and this was probably the hardest thing that I've ever drilled, I've drilled through stainless steel a lot easier with a lubricant or cutting oil. I had to use a cutting oil and also a step-up bit with this aluminum and go very slowly after doing the pilot holes. So yeah, step-up bit is a major improvement. Thank you to my boy for actually pointing that out. He's a welder. Told me you need to use a step-up bit for that aluminum. So I finally got through it like that, and then I got some bolts in it. It's secured. It's no longer rusted. It doesn't look terrible anymore. Let's go. And finally, after doing all of those side quests, I finally got the new O2 sensors in the mail. So once I got them, I just popped them in, and I realized that the codes went away. Started up the car, absolutely no issue whatsoever. I still did have a code for the coolant or the intercooler pump. Yeah, we need to replace that. So I sourced a used one. I bought it for around $60 instead of buying brand new, but it was off of the same exact car. And I mean, it said it only had 10,000 miles on it, so it's pretty much brand new. It wasn't like all crusty and old. Anyways, I did realize when I took out the old O2 sensors that weren't working, that there was a bunch of water in the connectors. While I remedied a solution for the new one, they're never going to get water in them again like that because I put dielectric grease on the connector on the outside. So kind of where the harness plugs into it, not on the inside, but on the outside to protect from moisture and water. As far as getting that new intercooler pump in, it's actually super easy. It's like literally 2 coolant hoses that you need to detach with band clamps, and then you could throw the new one in and obviously plug in the electrical connector. So that really didn't take too long, but you do need to bleed the supercharger and the cooling system after you do this because you introduce air pockets when you disconnect coolant lines. So that's part of the process that I also had to do. Let's see if it's all good to go now with the new intercooler pump.
The Audi is back to normal now, oh my goodness!
So let's go ahead and get this bumper back on, right? And do some preliminary testing before I do my last major milestone before I sell the car. And that's to run a 10-second pass. Well, one of my 2 last major milestones. I'll leave the other one as a surprise for an upload this week. We did something really cool with the Audi as the final send-off.
Bro, you can't have this car not clean for the run, bro. You gotta get this clean, bro. I clean, it's okay, I clean.
Let's just say you're literally up to no good when you load the E40 tune.
Let's go! Let's go!
Well, it felt good because there were a lot of people saying things like this that it would never run again on TikTok, Instagram, all this stuff. So I was super hyped at the moment and it put down its PB time. I think I only had like 400 feet of DA. It definitely had more in it. See, this thing doesn't even have a divorced coolant system and it does not have an upgraded intercooler pump. So with more cooling, it could go even faster. And let me remind you all, it did this full weight, no weight reduction at all. A dubski like that requires a good wash. So the wrap was very dirty, obviously, because I was working on it in the garage. It had rained a couple of times when it flooded, and I just wanted to make sure that it looked nice after running that time. So, I mean, if you guys want to see me build some more crazy cars, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Also consider hitting that subscribe button and also the like button. Now, I did also make sure by washing the car that it wasn't going to flood again in the ECU box by checking out if the drains would drain, and they did, so we're all good on that. They're no longer clogged. I don't have to worry about that again as long as I continuously check up on the drains. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please remember to comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one, where we're going to be taking the Audi to a very special place. You can't miss this upload. What's up, guys? This is Zesty Wash, and I'm going to show you what it does today.
I said